All right, joining us to discuss the implications of Israeli strike in Doha is Stephen Zunes. He's a professor of politics at the University of San Francisco. Professor Zunes, Israel has long argued that Hamas leaders are legitimate targets wherever they are. But what does striking them in Doha tell you about Israel's strategy?
Well, it shows that they are even willing to attack negotiators. I mean, these people were not responsible for the terrorist attacks. These were not from the armed wing of Hamas. These are diplomats, in a sense, and they were studying the latest proposal, preparing for the next round of talks. And generally, it's considered bad form, indeed illegal, to attack people you're supposed to be negotiating with, especially in the country that is trying to play a mediating role.
Yeah, Qatar is both furious and is also, as you mentioned, central to mediation. Has Israel effectively sabotaged the prospects of seeing hostages released and ceasefire achieved, or is there still a path forward for diplomacy here?
It's hard to say. I mean, the message seemed pretty clear that they were not interested in continued negotiations. When you kill the people you're supposed to be talking with, I mean that's some indication that you're determined to go through with a military solution. And indeed, the proposal by Trump that Israel has accepted is one that is very one-sided. It would allow Israel to maintain its occupation and have Hamas release the remaining hostages, which, of course, they should not have never been kidnapped in the first place, is indeed their one piece of leverage that they have. So it's not really a realistic proposal without Israel in return ending its occupation, agreeing to a permanent ceasefire. My sense, actually, for some time now, is that Israel really is not interested in a negotiated a settlement at this point. Netanyahu is determined to try to push through a military solution, essentially destroying much of the what remains of Gaza and expelling the population. He and Trump have been pretty open about that, actually, and so. This may indeed be the nail on the coffin for any even pretense of a negotiated settlement, and that settlement. And that's why you see so many Israelis, families and friends of the hostages out in the street protesting right now.
Professor, the Qatari leadership says they have the right to respond. First up, how do you see them doing that? And what would that mean then for the wider Middle East reaction, especially the 15 or so Arab League countries that don't have normalized ties with Israel?
Well, Qatar, that has a fairly substantial military for its size, but certainly no match to Israel. I don't imagine there'd be any kind of military response that's being contemplated right now. But Qatar does have an outside diplomatic influence in the region. I mean, they've been hosts not just to the Hamas-Israel negotiations, but to a whole number of negotiations involving other countries in the region. They have a reputation that they want to maintain, and if they can't be a safe haven for negotiators, I mean, that is obviously something that is quite disturbing for them. I think their best hope is to get other Arab governments, including those that have recognized Israel, to perhaps reevaluate their relationship and to pressure the United States to respond more. I mean, there's some debate about how much, what the United States knew when, and that sort of thing. But they are the host to a large American military base, and especially if the United States does end up having been in cahoots with Israel to some degree, or had delayed warning the Qataris, they might indeed feel the best way to pressure Israel is to pressure the United States, and including some of the strategic cooperation agreements that the base included.
Yeah, speaking of the U.S., Professor, the White House statement was quite stark in criticizing Israel, yet they did admit it was notified in advance of the strike. So if Washington truly opposed this operation, why didn't it use its leverage to stop it?
Yeah, that's the big question in Qatar and elsewhere right now. They say they did warn them, but it was too late. Though it's interesting, that reaction came several hours after a more kind of neutral statement, and perhaps this is just damage control, given the strong reaction. And though Trump's what Trump said, U.S. officials said was somewhat more critical of Israel than we normally hear. It was short of outright condemnation, and so and one has to wonder, if the finger wagging, or however you want to describe the U.S. reaction at this point, is enough to make the Qataris feel that their strategic relationship with the United States is still on solid ground, and the reaction of other Arab allies of the United States, who are pretty upset about this right now, that remains to be seen.
And if President Trump insists the U.S. tried to warn Doha, but it was too late, would it then leave the U.S. complicit or looking weak, given what you mentioned, that vast military base that it has in Qatar?
Indeed, because this is not a situation of the tail wagging the dog. I mean, some people who exaggerate the power of the pro-Israel elements within the United States, but we've seen any number of presidents in the past, Eisenhower, Carter, Reagan, the first President Bush, Obama, who have pressured Israel to withdraw from occupied territories, to stop military offenses, and indeed there have been some reactions to more provocative Israeli actions, such as suspending certain arms transfers or whatever. The United States does have some power here, but it's one that President Trump, and for that matter President Biden, have not chosen to utilize. And whether this will be something that leads Trump to do so remains to be seen. But personally, I'm a bit skeptical.
Professor, finally, there's been condemnation from the European Union, the United Kingdom as well, among the notables. Could this latest attack then galvanize more pressure on Israel based on the international law principle, and to what end?
Well, certainly this was a clear violation of international law, and European countries have generally been more sensitive to those concerns than the United States in recent years. And the Europeans do have very strong trade relations with Gulf countries. Qatar, along with the neighboring Emirates, were protectorates of Great Britain for many decades, and so there are these close ties. And so I do think that the Europeans will try to use what influence they have to show their support for Qatar in reaction to this violation of its sovereignty, and perhaps try to get Washington to come down a little harder than they've been willing to do so far regarding Israeli actions.
Professor, thank you for your time. Stephen Zunes is Professor of Politics at the University of San Francisco.